All right, so good afternoon and welcome to our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. This is our open Q&A session where our goal is to be a live forum for transitioning military, veterans, military spouses, and allies, which basically means everybody else, to answer your questions while you are on your Salesforce learning journey. Pretty much any Salesforce related topic is fair game. The only thing that we ask is that we hold off on asking any specific questions about Salesforce super badges, just to make sure that we stay within the the policies of Salesforce when it comes to those. So, like I said, any question is fair game. You have an issue with a trailhead badge, you have an issue or a challenge at work, anything that we could try to help out with 26 sets of eyes, we'll see what we can do. Before we move on, just to let you know, there's a few other ways that you can stay connected after the call. If you're not already signed up on mtofficehours.com, you can do that and you'll receive email reminders about this session, Military Trailblazer Office Hour sessions. You can follow us and follow the page and join our group on LinkedIn as well. And then we also have a Slack workspace that you can connect with folks from the call after as well. So with that, let me stop my share. We'll open up to questions. So if anybody has a question, all I ask is that you use the gestures at the bottom where you can raise your hand. That way we get everybody kind of in order as they have questions, and we'll go through them one at a time. So with that, does anybody have any questions or topics that they'd like to go over for today? Sandy, see you have a hand up. What do you got?
Always, right? So Salesforce's archiving functionality, has anybody used that? And anybody know how to actually set it up?
And we say archiving, this is like their data archiving backup type application?
Yeah, they have it's called something about you define the big object, because if you have it set up, you can save a lot more data if you are coming close to what you're allotted without having to pay for additional storage space.
I am not familiar with that. Has anybody worked with that in the past?
I do not know that they have a archiving solution. I'm gonna Google it right now and look at it.
It's called big object. You have to set up the big object.
Yeah, so if it's moving data from, say, you have opportunity or accounts, right? You have accounts you want to pull off an archive. If they're saying using big objects, you'd have to create the account structure in a big object structure, and then create flows to push that data, delete it from your account object and append it into the big object, and then delete it from the account. If that's what I'm thinking they're telling you to do for archiving. To me, that's not archiving, because you're kind of not taking it off the platform, but you're moving that data. The one thing about big objects is very limited in what you can do with it, even with reporting. So I would, before you attempt to do anything like that, make sure whatever your business processes are, that you can still utilize that data in the way that you need to once it's in a big object.
Yeah, so just to kind of say that a slightly different way, or maybe the exact same way, this would be what you described as, kind of like a manual archiving process, where if you have data that's in your primary, like custom objects or even Salesforce standard objects, that's taking up a lot of space, you don't need to reference it all the time. It's just something you want to keep, but you don't necessarily want to keep it in the main object because you don't want to use up all your storage. You can create a big object and then move the data into that big object. I also thought that Salesforce had they have like a backup and restore product as well. That's what I initially thought that you were talking about. And I've never used it.
From what I understand, it's not very all encompassing.
Yeah.
So all I'll say is, being I work for a competitor, do your due diligence if you're going to use backup and restore from Salesforce. The one thing I could tell you right away is you're actually backing up on the same platform. So if Salesforce is locked out, you're locked out of your backups too. And from a backup procedure perspective, that's not really the right way to do things, but I'll shut up.
Yeah, I definitely see your point with, wanting your backups in the traditional sense about keeping them kind of off the system that your primary system, like keep it somewhere else to make sure that, it's available. That being said, I can also see the argument that there's different levels of backup that you might want to do, right? So if you're just trying to protect yourself from your users, like they accidentally deleted a bunch of data, you need to be able to restore it because they made a mistake. That kind of stuff, I can see that having it in the same platform, that would be okay. Recovering from, the Salesforce data center falls into the earth or something, and you want to be able to get that data off the platform, that would definitely be something you'd want to have it off-site or off-prem. But yeah, so Sandy, what do you think? What was the use case you were looking at?
Hold on, let me look at what I actually found and why I was trying to figure out a solution. They have in one of their records or one of their objects, it was they have 3.1 million records of one custom object and 2.8 million of another custom object.
And this is
So
data that they need to maintain, historical data. They can't just like
I
delete
don't know
old
yet.
stuff.
I honestly am not 100% yet. It's just that that is taking up over 70% of their overall data that they're currently using, which is at over 70% of their maximum. So, and some of that stuff, I think the oldest date on any of those is from like 2021. And so I don't know if it's something that they need to actually maintain within their system or if they can pull it off and just do like a general backup. But because at this point we're just auditing and making recommendations. That's kind of why. And at this point, going with the not paid version of something is, I feel like knowing them from in the past that they would be more likely to go with a non-paid version of something than a paid version of something.
Yeah, fair enough.
The one thing I will recommend to you is taking a look at this data, and if there's nothing related to it, it makes it easier to move it off. But if there's things related to it, it's now you're removing that and the relationship. So
Yeah.
you really got to do your due diligence on what this data is that they want to remove. Because there's things like, so the article that you posted, that's specific to content files. That's not archiving Salesforce records out of the system, just a FYI.
I'm having a hard time finding real clear information about how it works and what it actually is. That's kind of why I was asking.
So the way I've heard archiving work is normally if it's data you don't need, it's a straight, account table, nothing related, you would export all fields into a CSV and then delete those records out of the system. That's kind of how I've heard native archiving is, right? But again, concerns around everything related to those records has to be taken into account. If there's maybe only one or two related objects, makes it a little bit easier. But where it gets really crazy and hairy is if it has a related object and that object has related objects, and then you kind of snowball. And that's when you kind of need like a real archiving solution to help.
Yeah. Now, only because I'm just now going through all this within my managed package right now. If this was something that was going to be a recurring thing where they generated 3 million records and they might well generate another 3 million of this object, and you just want to constantly have an archive process moving it from, the current tables over to like a big object. If you're not familiar with it from a development standpoint, there's what you would even call it. There's a framework called FFlib. So it's like the enterprise architecture framework for Salesforce developers. One of the things that they cover in there is a thing called the unit of work, right? Where you can basically, long story short, if you had an object that you were trying to create, and then you were going to create 4 child records of that, and then create 4 child records of those, they have these basically utilities where you can like say, okay, like map all this stuff to the other object, and then in the end just hit go, and it handles inserting the records in the proper order, maintaining the relationships. So moving it from a standard table into a big object, I could see how that unit of work model would be really helpful. Of course, you have to implement, you have to write all the code and do all that stuff, but I can see how you can get there depending on the use case. Just one question on this: has anybody ever created a big object on like purpose, like for non-testing, just like an actual use case? I don't think I know they're
Only in
there.
Trailhead, and
Yeah,
I know we're planning them out now for a current project at my company that we're about to implement. We just haven't done it yet. We have, we're laying the groundwork for using
yeah,
them. So I've got read about them, learned about them. Actual usage has been Trailhead, which they've got a basic intro module, and I think it's also a couple of the super badges that are out there right now require you to go make a big object. So you got to see, okay, can you do it? But that's not
yeah,
that's not real life.
yeah. I don't think I've ever come across somebody that's actually done it on purpose, like non-trailhead. So
Yes, something else I just wanted to mention is sometimes you really don't have business putting certain data on Salesforce. I'm saying that because we had a case where, we just had history of a particular record and it was just, taking space on Salesforce. Sometimes a solution where you have some cheap hosting or Linux or something that, you can just, forget the data there sometimes helps to, solve that problem. We know how expensive Salesforce is and how difficult it is to maintain data. So sometimes I just like to encourage people, what are your data retention policies? How much do you need this data? You really do not need to put everything on Salesforce.
yeah, fair enough.
If I can add just a comment real quick. Sandy, I don't know if this is we've been talking a lot about big objects, and I don't know that this is related, but I happen to be going through the summer 24 release notes, and there was a blog there about files and attachments backup in Salesforce backup. I'd not heard of it before. And so I don't know how valuable it is and stuff, but it was an interesting read, so I thought I'd throw that.
Gotcha.
Well,
And if you have a good Sandy?
So from what I understand about the issue in this particular org is while I believe there are files with these records, that's not what's taking up space, because there's the file storage limit, and then there's the data storage limit, and they're coming close to their data storage limit.
Gotcha. As per usual, I don't think we have an answer for you right here, but once you go through the rest of your analysis and you end up on a solution one way or the other, I'd love to hear kind of where you land on this.
I still need to work on that other one that we were talking about last week too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see if you might be the first person I know that's actually implemented a big object on purpose. So we'll see. That'd be great.
We'll see if that's the route they want to go.
Yeah. Now, for those that want to dork around with big objects, just to get an idea of what they are and how they work, I did post the Trailhead module that I think Ryan was alluding to on big objects in the chat. And and I'll do this real quick here. I'll share my screen. If you just want to kind of play around with it, you can always log into your Salesforce. If you go to the gear icon, go to setup, and then in the quick find here, if you just type in object, you'll see that there are right here, big objects under data. So you have your normal object manager that have all your accounts and custom objects and things. And then there's this big objects here. And if you go there and you click new, it looks very similar to what you would see when you create an actual custom object. And if here, I'll just do it here. So if I do test, tests, and then save, brings you right into that screen that again looks very, very familiar, where you can create custom or custom fields on that object. But you'll notice that it's a little bit trim compared to what you might be used to for the different field types that you can create. So again, something to take a look at. Look at the Trailhead, see if it might apply to a use case that you have. So.
And if you look up storage usage on that in your
Yeah.
quick as well.
Yep. So storage usage.
And then it shows you the data storage, the file storage, and the big object storage.
Oh, look at that limit. Wait, what is that? What is that number? Is that number of records?
I don't know, because if it's a number of records, well, that's not going to work out because we've got over 5 million.
No, big objects can do billions of records. It's not the number of records.
That's what I thought.
So what could it be? What is 1 million?
Probably megabytes, and they just ran out of space in their.
Yeah.
It's ironic, right? Like,
Wouldn't they say 1 gig though, or isn't a gig a million? No.
yeah, I don't know what that would be. There really should be like a label.
Wow.
Yeah, unit.
That's what they tell us in math class.
Exactly.
Maybe you got to use some to get the limit.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. So anybody have any follow-up questions or thoughts on that before we move on? All right. So let's open it back up to other questions then. Any other topics or questions that anyone would like to go through for today? Let's see, Angie, you're talking about the field size limit. Do you have any thoughts on that as far as what is that? Like you're talking about the text area long, like that limit?
Well, yeah, I was just saying that million, it's because they set the field size limit at 7 digits at some point in time and didn't realize they would have to put 7 plus MB. So like every time I create a custom field that's text and it's like, how long do you want this to be? I'm like, I don't know.
Well, let me actually take a look at that, because I thought here, let me just share real quick. So if you go into for example, accounts, and I create a new field and we go to text area long, for example, there we go. So yeah, so length is you're currently using 0 out of whatever characters for this object. Okay, so for all the text area long fields you have an object, the total length of all of them combined can be 1,638,400, which is a very unique number, but I'm sure it means something.
I've encountered it.
Yeah, so let's do tal test 1, and I'll make it a nice even 40,000. Save, and next, save. And this is where I get paranoid. I'm in a customer work now. So it's a Trailhead playground. Good. All right, text area long. And then using 40,000 of that. Okay. All right, that makes sense. So it's not about the number of characters of like actual data you're putting in there. It's just for all the fields you have, the total allocated space has to be within that certain number. Got it. Interesting.
Yeah,
Again,
I ran into it once on knowledge, that a client wanted to use knowledge articles and they wanted to have multiple they wanted to basically use the knowledge articles to do published articles kind of a deal, in a nice long form. And that's the only time I've encountered that limit.
so my first thought went to if I hit that limit as a workaround, I can imagine creating a custom object called long text areas or something like that. Make it a related object to whatever thing you actually care about, and then have it as a related list. Or if you wanted to create like 14 of these things, you could just create a new record every time underneath the object. I could see that being a thing. Yeah, how'd you solve that?
I think the client eventually decided that they didn't need to do as many, because we had looked at splitting it off into another object, just like you say, and ultimately they ended up not going with that big for their facts and stories.
Gotcha. All right. Awesome. Well, let's see. Any follow-up questions on that before we open it back up for questions? Hearing none. All right. So let's open it back up. Anybody have any other questions or topics that they would like to go through for today? No questions, huh? Let's see. I did see a hand flash for a moment.
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah, you got Rochelle.
What if there's some people filling out maybe different companies, but they're from the same company. So let's say they're Google, and in Salesforce, you'll see another one that says google.com. And even though they're the same company, or there's a type of Google A, and you're like, no, they're all in the same organization. So does it show like there's a bunch of different organizations? What's the best way to like kind of mitigate that they're in the same organization?
Is this in the context of like a web to lead or something like that, where people are like filling out information and they're just putting like slightly different variations of the account name? Or is this
Yeah.
data that people are like creating manually?
It seems like it's the web to lead that's happening, and then we're catching it when we see it, and we're like, and then having to like edit it manually.
Like move them over there? Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I do. Do you ask on your web form for their website or domain?
Yes.
Through
But
the, like through the email, if you get if you can extract the domain, you can group them all together.
okay.
Like,
Yeah. So
go ahead, Bill, sorry.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, so the records that are actually being created, they're actually being created as contacts, or they're being created as leads?
I believe it's contacts. I'm learning as I'm going, and
Yeah.
so it looks like it goes into contacts in the system.
And okay, so if I were to go into like enter something in on the website or whatever it is, it's creating, if I put in Google as my company name, on your side, it's creating an account record called Google, and it's creating the contact under that account.
I believe so, yeah. But
Okay.
sometimes they don't put their whole thing. Could be like Google LLC or something extra
Yeah.
to it or whatnot.
Yeah. So whatever, so between somebody entering something in on like a website, like a form, and it getting into the records on Salesforce, there's got to be some type of processing that's happening there. A lot of times Salesforce here, and I'll share my screen just to kind of speak to this, but a lot of times what people are using is, I think it's called web. Hold on, let's see if I can actually type web to lead. So a lot of times people have these kind of forms where you put in data and then it just comes into Salesforce as a lead. And then for it to get from a lead into an account and a contact, there's usually like a lead conversion process. Or maybe you have something custom set up where they're putting in some information on a website and it's just it's checking to see if that account exists already. And if not, it's creating one and then creating the contact under that account. Whatever that mechanism is, whether it's doing like a lead conversion or whatever the logic is that's looking for an existing account, um, I think that's where there needs to be some kind of additional logic added there. So to Gina's point, one strategy could be, okay, you get a lead in, and if you're going the lead conversion route, when the lead comes into the system, you could take their email address, parse it, basically get rid of whatever is before the @ sign, and you're left with just a domain. And basically on your account object, you would have the representative email domain for that account. So in the case of Google, anything that's at google.com, would be treated, that's the account. So if they put in google.com, Google LLC, whatever it is, you kind of ignore that and you're just looking at their email domain and you're seeing if you have an account that already has that domain associated to it. And then that's where you would put the contact under it. But I think the details, the challenge is going to be in that the nuance of how your system currently works. Like, is it web to lead or is it, something else? I don't know. But anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Rochelle.
Some of them use like their personal email that's not associated, so they could be part of that company or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they don't, they want to, yeah,
So you
have
put like
their
Gmail.
alias.
They
Yeah,
put like,
something.
okay. then in that case, I've honestly never had great success with this, but I can ask others on the call. But the duplicate rules and the matching rules and fuzzy logic and things like that, I don't know how far that would
Yeah.
get you.
That's what I was going to suggest, was looking at matching rules. But as far as actually, I haven't really been on a lot of engagements where I deal with leads, so I haven't had to mess with the trying to match as you convert them into accounts.
Yeah. So let me do this here again, just for those that might not be aware. In Salesforce, if you go into setup and you look for, and again, I feel like I have to refigure this out every time. Okay, so let me actually look for duplicate just to get it all. So you have the duplicate management, and under there you have matching rules and duplicate rules. And this basically allows you to identify like criteria to identify what is a duplicate and what is not. So if I were to click into this, I actually think, and again, this is the part where I have to refigure out where the rule actually lives. But under duplicate rules, if we go in here, let's see, yeah, matching criteria. Yeah, see, that's the part. That's what I'm saying. I always get confused on the matching criteria. But yeah, and long story short, you can actually develop a rule that says like, first name, if it's like Bill or Billy, like it'll have like a fuzzy matching logic. And I assume that you can do the same thing on a company name. But again, I'm just not too familiar with that whole process, and I've never fully found it useful. Megan, it sounds like you have a comment.
I haven't done it on Web to Lead, but I did just have to implement it for a company that was like putting in multiple records that sometimes had the same name. So I was able to do it off of matching. I had to create a matching rule and then a duplication rule on top of it, so that if it did match, they were able to go in and make the changes. And only one person was actually able to create it to where it was like literally the same name. So they could override the duplication, but only one person. But that's how I had to do it. I had to build the matching rule first, and then you have to add the duplication action to it. So they have to go together. If
Yeah.
you're gonna do it for a duplication to reduce the duplication. That's all I know. And it was the first time I used it, but it worked.
Yeah, they're neat,
Well-
and I've used them on some standard or on some custom objects and other things. I
Yeah.
just don't know about for this application
Yeah, that's what
how
I'm saying.
well they'll help you out. But they're super
And
cool because they'll pop up on your screen before you hit save, so they're better than the validation rule if you're typing stuff in. So
And it actually shows you the record that it's duplicating off of, so that you can choose which one to go to like see what's happening.
Steve, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, where I work at Resource here, I've been trying to keep up with that stuff, and I haven't had a great deal of luck with catching everything. But I will say that I did find that you can manually create a match and then have it run through the comparison and pick the ones and pick the fields and so forth to put in. So yeah, if you research that works. It doesn't work at scale, I'm sure, but
we can pull
Yeah.
it into a report, and then run that report, and it just so it'll help clean it up. As far as preventing it in the first place, catching up, that's where I'm like, I don't know what your mileage is going to be on that, but it can be really handy for pulling in reports of all the potential, and then give you a nice screen where you can decide whether you want to merge and keep one as the primary or how you want to go from there. So
Yeah.
pretty cool tool. I don't know if it's exactly what will hook you up here, but
Now, thinking, duplicate rules, matching rules, all that kind of stuff, like you said, that kind of helps you. I think that helps you if you're working in Salesforce creating stuff. I think mileage may vary if it's like coming from external and it's creating records. Now, thinking outside the box as you were all speaking here, I wonder if there were specific companies that are like repeat offenders. Like, let's just say that you work with 4 or 5 like really large enterprise organizations where people are signing up and they're filling out their details. So for example, you mentioned Google. So let's just say that, there's a few variations that you see all the time. Google LLC, Google.com LLC, like things like that. I can imagine a world also where you create on the account side some type of way to keep track of like common aliases for that account, whether it's like in a custom field, or maybe it's like a custom related list that you have on the account object called account name aliases, something like that. And then again, whatever that logic is that's taking it from however it's coming in from external to creating an account and a contact, I can see how you can have some type of, record triggered flow that just checks, does this account name match any of the aliases for an account? And if it does, link it to that account. So a lot of different ways you can handle that, but I think there's probably a lot of nuance in how things are working right now in the system as to whether or not that would be feasible.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was I wonder if it's an experience cloud or just web to lead. If it's experience cloud, then you have more control on, maybe creating an LWC, for example, or while the user types on key event change or, HTML5, you can run an Apex class while he's still filling the form to find out if it matches any records within your org, and then you can do a lot more. Sorry, I'm speaking. Is more developer than admin kind of stuff. But if it's Experience Cloud, I'm trying to figure out if it's that, then there's a lot you can do.
Yeah.
Experience Cloud.
Yeah, that's a great point. So whether it's a Lightning Web component, or I'll even throw out like a screen flow, for example, if they typed in the account name, when they hit next, you could apply some logic there, take out any LLCs, .coms, corps, incs, all that kind of stuff, do a search on the account object to see if you found records that are similar, and then present that to the user to say, hey, are you sure it's not one of these that we already have? And then let them select it and maybe override that logic. That makes a lot of sense doing it like that. I could see maybe potentially you would want to make sure you build in like security and things like that. Like I could see you exposing data that you might not intend to expose when you do that, but that's a great suggestion. If, to your point, the data entry part of it is on the Salesforce platform as well, so you could do all those searches and whatnot before they submit or as they submit. It's a great idea. Michelle, I don't know if any of that helps you that we all went through there.
Oh, I'm a
But
sponge. I love it. So like I have access to the sandbox because, I'm on my training wheels. And so I learn, when I'm going through Trailblazer and then real life problems and tasks that are happening. So, I'm all about the ideas and problem solving, just how to apply it. I'm learning that part, and then, the rules and security aspect to it. So
yeah,
I'm trying to, look up what was it, the Experience Cloud?
yeah,
Yeah, and see what that's about, or if we have licenses and stuff like that.
yeah. Yeah, so I think based on all the suggestions that we're throwing out there, I think a lot of that gets into like implementing solutions. Where the other thing I think we should point out too is taking a complete step back. If you're kind of brand new in this org, you realize that some data is getting created that is causing duplicates or whatever it is. There's a whole other step there that we kind of glanced over, which is doing the analysis to figure out, well, where does this form, what is the technology behind the form that people are submitting the data? That gets to, is it like a WordPress form? Is it web to lead? Is it a Lightning component that's running off of an Experience Cloud site? Like basically figuring out where's the data coming from, and then figuring out what's that mechanism, like how it's actually getting into Salesforce. Again, is it Experience Cloud where it's like a Lightning component that is just saving the records, through all the normal Lightning things? Is it something that is coming in and it's being parsed via Apex? Like there's that kind of analysis to figure out like what is the current state, where's the stuff coming from, and how's it getting into Salesforce? And then I think you'll be in a much better position to figure out like what's the solution there. But like that analysis phase, I would say, is very important not to glance over that. Because you might find that the data is coming in from a mechanism that you have absolutely no control over. Like it's a corporate website and they have no interest in migrating that to Experience Cloud with a form and all that kind of stuff. Or you might find out, it's they threw together something and they're really open to throwing something else together that might give us a lot more flexibility. So yeah. But as you get into that analysis in the sandbox and you continue on your journey, I would love to hear updates as you move forward. So. All right. Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
Well, we're an insurance division, and we'll sell insurance to company A who owns company B, C, D, and E. And those companies may own subsidiaries. And to keep track of everything is we use the parent ID. And so everything can roll up to the parent ID, anything associated. So if you have google.com as your parent, then all your subsidiaries, LLC, whatever, could be tied to the parent ID. It's just an idea.
Got it. Yeah, I can see in this case, it sounds like the .coms, the LLCs, all that kind of stuff are just very like it's the same company. I think what you're describing it makes a lot more sense when you think about, and now that I said the sentence, I'm trying to think what's a good example of where you would have multiple subsidiaries of a parent account. What's a good example of that? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
The one that I can think of is like J&J, because J&J, all divisions of J&J operate differently. Like you have pharmaceuticals, you have over the counter, you have pet health. So they all operate as separate entities, but they all run, roll up to like J&J.
Yeah, that's a good example. Great example. And again, that's more of I think of that more of like structuring your data in a logical sense that doesn't necessarily solve for the just dirty duplicate misspellings, all that kind of like punctuation that people might type in a form. Still requires a little bit of manual intervention, I think, to make sure you're putting a contact like under the right subsidiary in your data hierarchy. But yeah, it's a good thing to point out. And Greg, that's you're using just the accounts and like the parent account ID to manage that.
Right. It's just
Okay.
anytime you have variants and we always roll them up to a parent ID.
Yeah, let me just take a second here. Again, this is one of those things that maybe people don't use it, so they might not be aware of it. So let me just share my screen.
One little note, Bill, that I'll just
Yeah.
say that we've found very helpful too when you're dealing with parent and when you're doing this hierarchy. We found it because we have some companies that have so many layers down that we actually embed the ultimate parent ID on each account record, so that if we ever want to, at a higher level, just run report and know how many subsidiaries that are under, we don't have to do that building of it's a parent of this, parent of this, a parent of this. So just a FYI, it could be helpful for some people.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let me start with the parent ID. So as you guys can see here, we have United Oil and Gas Corp, then we have United Oil and Gas Singapore and UK. Right. So to basically maintain a relationship between these different records and the top level parent account, what you can do is if you were to go into this account record, you notice that we have this parent account field. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select here. Let's just do United Oil and Gas. So I'm going to select the top level corporation and I'm going to save. And I'm going to do that. What is this? Oh, see, I broke myself. This is the FF flip stuff. So anyway, if you didn't have a bunch of triggers and other nonsense that you deployed into this org, you'd be able to select a parent account. And then the piece that I wanted to kind of point out is if you were to go to any one of these accounts, the parent or the children, and you notice that there's this little icon here that you can click on, this will show the account hierarchy. So if you did select, child accounts and then childs for those children and whatnot, you'll be able to see that full account hierarchy of everything that's underneath that parent. So you can kind of build like a, hierarchy of all the divisions, subsidiaries and whatnot of a given account. I just realized this was the org that I started dorking around with all the FFlib stuff and units of work and selector classes and domain classes and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. I should pick a better hands-on on Trailhead. But yeah, so any thoughts on that or anything that we just covered before we move on? Okay, so let's see. Anybody have any other topics or questions that they would like to walk through for today?
I just want to know, has anybody ever had to edit what pops up on an approval process, or are you able to edit it? I'm not talking about in the approval process itself. I'm talking about the buttons. When you do like submit for approval and it's like, it just pops up like a comments box for you to fill in before you do the submission, like before you actually approve it. Is there any way to change that, or does it need to be custom, like a custom button?
Anybody have any thoughts before I give a?
I swear to God, if Ryan says it depends, where is he?
I had a client that did have some custom fields on that screen. I don't know if I still have access to their sandbox, but if I get bold, I'll check it and let you know if we don't
Thank
come up with
you.
anything else here.
Yeah,
If it's anything like the standard new or edit buttons, yes, there's a way to edit it.
that's
but,
what I thought. But okay.
But
It's one
it's-
of those weird ones where I need to go into Classic to do it.
Well, I thought
re-
with the new and the edit, it was more about like you either override it completely and create a new button, or you have to do like that whole Aura component crap, which I was never able to figure out. And that would probably be more of a Bill thing because he's good at that stuff.
Yeah, I want to see Bill pull it up.
I'm trying right now just to see what we can do here. So let me. Sandy, you don't have a shareable org that already has an approval process set up on something that we can see that initial screen by chance?
I did. Yeah. I mean, it's just a support process. It's nothing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
right?
not Sandy. Yeah, Megan, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was
no,
looking at
it's fine.
Sandy and
No, it's fine. I should be able to, because all it is like, it's just a regular. Ryan, I'm good, right? I'm just showing like an approval process. There's nothing internal. We should be good.
Are you showing client stuff? That's what you need to.
I am not showing client stuff. I'm showing our stuff.
hey, this is a good
I'm
point
actually
to,
showing my stuff. So it's a sandbox and I'm showing my stuff. So
Yeah. And let me just point out that yes, as we're sharing things on our screens, these calls are recorded for quality assurance training and YouTube purposes. So just keep that in mind as you bring up your screen.
yeah, no, we should be good. You guys all know the people on here. They're all over LinkedIn that they work at my company. So, okay. I will share. Share screen too. All right. So here, when you're in the approval process, this might not be a good one. This might not have it. Okay, right here. This button where you click approve. This approve support case that pops up where it has these comments. I want to add a checkbox right above the comments that just says, you know, yes, I've verified the documentation. Just to put more onus on them to be like, yeah, I did do this. So does anybody know how to put a nice little checkbox right there?
I think you need a screen flow. or
That's what
something.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I was wondering if I would, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, let me ask you a question. So to do it all in one step, yeah, I would agree with Gina that you might need to have some type of customization, screen flow, Lightning Web Component, something like that. But I'm curious if within the approval processes, you have like you can have like different approval steps, right? Could one of those approval steps be like verified documentation? And when they approve that step, you have an action there that checks a box that says, yes, they verified the documentation. And then it brings them to the next step where they can then approve like the overall approval. You know what I mean? Like do it as like a separate approval
As a
step
separate
altogether.
step. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put that on here. Just maybe add.
I don't know what the user like experience of that would be, because then you have like a guy that's got to go through 3 times to approve something to get it through all the different steps.
This already has 3 approval processes tied to it. So what is one more at this point?
Right. Yeah. Now let's think of this. If we're going to go that approach where we were going to do something custom, right? So we're kind of stepping out of the built-in Salesforce approval mechanism. What would a screen flow look like, and what would the mechanism look like if you were going to use that instead of the native Salesforce approval?
So what I was thinking about doing was actually creating my own approve button up here, like, and tying it to it somehow. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because when I went into the screen to actually find the record that it was approving, like what it was pulling the highlights panel for, I can't set it. Like I can't find it, but I can create, actually I'll share again. I'll show you. I'll show you what I'm talking about because I'm saying it and you guys probably make sure like I'm not.
All right,
Yes.
sure. So you're back in here. So you come out of here, right? And you go to edit the page. I
Like
was
nothing
trying, no, there's something there. There's a record there. Oh, by the way, you can pull approval processes into a flow. There is an object for it. I found it. Right, Ryan? We haven't gotten it to work yet, but we can do it. You can bring in the process instance steps into a flow and with the timestamps and everything. It's really fun. It's like how many minutes it's been in the approval process, hours, days. Okay, so this is what you get. But from here, on your highlights panel, doesn't tell you where it's coming from. But you do have the option to upgrade it to dynamic actions. So if I did it that way, I'm wondering if I could kind of mix like what Gina was saying. I just build my own. It's a screen flow, and then I just call an action to submit it after they've done that extra step.
Where do you like when you add actions onto an object's page, usually you're creating that action on the object, or it's a global action or something like that.
Yep.
Where do you create the action that it would allow you to put it onto, like, even if you clicked upgrade now, does it give you the option to like put custom actions?
I haven't done it yet. I'm afraid to click the button.
But I mean, you can click the button as long as you don't save, you should be good, right?
Right.
I know that was more of a question. I don't know if like
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna save
do
it.
anything, right? Okay.
It's a sandbox. I'll have Lauren refresh it if I screw something up too bad.
As I like to say, what's the worst that can happen, right?
That's the
All right.
spirit.
I
Yeah,
can't.
so there you go. That's to me, that's the famous Salesforce gotcha. Like it lets you do the migration, but then you don't get any of the benefits of it, right? You can't add a custom button. You can't add any buttons. It looks like now that it's been
You
migrated,
can,
right?
you'd have to do, I think you have to do it all over again. Not here in the setup. I can't remember exactly, but what it does is it clears all of that for you, and then you have to manually specify the buttons that you want.
In the approval process?
Not in the, I think in the objects, I would have to, take a look. I think on the object itself or in the
But
page
that's the
itself.
thing. The
So
object,
that's-
that object doesn't exist, right?
It's
Like there's
paired
no
up. It's-
approval request object.
Yes, there is.
Not through the thing where you can actually go to actions and create one, right?
Right. Well, right here, look. See?
Okay, that's something
That's
new.
why that's how I came up with the idea to pull it into the flow, is because there is an object.
Now, if you create a new action here,
I
does
don't
it
know.
just? I mean, will it magically just show up on that screen when you?
So I'm thinking we'd have to like figure out a way to do it, because we'd have to create a lightning record page for it to actually assign it, and then we'd have to assign it as the org wide default.
So why
Also-
is it then?
Also, I hate approval processes, and I'd rather just build everything through flow, and I don't even like building flows because I'm not good at it.
Yeah, I haven't done with actions, but I had one client where like I could put a related list on here, but like just the screen flow component directly on the page and get it to work.
That's what you added to it?
Yeah, but it's just annoying because you got to go through like the process instant work item, then like the process
Yes.
instant item, and then there's like
Yes.
3 loops to get down to what you actually
Yes.
care about.
Yeah. It's like, so it's the work item, the instance, the step instance.
Yeah.
Hey, Stephen and Megan, if I can ask you guys a personal question right now, how is it that I don't have the approval request object when I go to Object Manager? Is it something that
It's
doesn't
not
show up?
searchable. So you need to like Megan did, you need to go from
Yep.
the record and then
Yep.
go edit object.
But if you look,
Oh, okay.
Or you
Yeah.
just like enter the URL in directly.
right, and you can like all of this, there's a dev guide for it, like all of the things and stuff that's attached to it.
Gotcha. Okay. I have to ask, why can't they just expose it through the tab? Like it's.
They don't want you in there.
Well, you know what? That's a good point, because that makes me nervous building any kind of production level customization around this. If they don't want you to do it, is there a chance that they might dork it up in the future with some kind of update? And then when it breaks up, like, well, it was never exposed. It wasn't really meant to be changed. I would worry about that.
Then they shouldn't have let me get to it at all. Like,
Yeah.
I am just dangerous enough.
Yeah, I think if we had a bit more time, I would love to kind of keep going through this and actually like create an action and then see if we can get it to be exposed on the page somewhere. But yeah, that's a
But yeah,
that's a
so
good one.
this is
Yep.
actually, you know what? Can I edit this? Because there's that content source again. Ryan, remember this stupid content source
Not sure what you're seeing.
when we were looking for the
Yeah,
content
it's not.
source?
It's not showing up here.
It's standard
to us.
page. You can't see, you're not seeing my screen
I see a
No.
screen. I don't see anything about content source.
over
Where's-
here, right here.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that again. So
I don't
here's the
remember.
name. So if we went in here, approve default standard page. I don't know what the, ooh, I don't know what this is.
That's what
I
I was
re-
talking about for being able to edit those standard buttons and actions.
Got it.
Yeah. Now the sad part is you have two options there. It looks like custom S control or visual force page, which
And there's
neither
a
one of those
visual,
is.
there's a visual force page. That's magic. You can do great things with that.
With the which one?
With the visual
Visual
force
force.
page, you can just put the checkbox, anything you want on there.
Yeah, the only downside is it's a visual force page. Like, why is that the only option they give us in
No,
2024?
y'all are talking to me like you think I know how to build a visual force page.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Megan, I'm going to take over sharing for a second,
Yep,
or I'm going
I
to
gotta
stop
get
your
ready
sharing.
for another meeting. So bye guys. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. And I was going to say the same thing. So appreciate all the conversation back and forth and questions and answers and everything else. If there's anything that we didn't get to, feel free to throw it into the Slack workspace or up on LinkedIn. And either way, hope everybody has a great weekend and we will catch up same time next week. So thanks all.